This video is for my mama, the best mama an 80s kid could ever ask for. Hey, you guys. When we were kids in the 80s, there was one thing that we knew for sure. Once mom's shows came on, the TV was no longer yours. You could beg, you could whine, you could roll around on the floor, but that was it. In prime time, the remote belonged to mom, and you were either going to bed or staying quiet while she got lost in a world of big hair, bigger drama, and impossibly handsome leading men. I'm talking about the shows that weren't meant for kids. These were smart, sexy, grown-up dramas that went way over our head at the time. But if you peeked around the corner or snuck back into the living room, you couldn't help but get pulled in. Mystery, romance, intrigue, betrayals, witty banter, steamy glances. The stories were grown up in a way that felt glamorous and exciting. And while we didn't always understand what was going on back then, looking back, these shows were absolutely iconic. And now, now we can finally appreciate just how good they really were. My name is Natalie. This is my so-called Gen X life. And here are the best 1980s TV dramas that your mom watched. This video is brought to you by me. I just wanted to take a quick second to tell you about my weekly live streams on Tuesday and Friday nights, where we chat about all things Gen X. We watch old videos, laugh at nostalgic social media posts, and reminisce about all the things we loved in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. If that sounds like a good time, all you gotta do is subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you know when I go live. And now, back to the video. Before we get started with our top 12, let's go over some quick honorable mentions. Hardcastle and McCormick. Retired Judge Milton Hardcastle partners with ex-con and race car driver Mark McCormick to solve cases the legal system failed to close. Using a high-tech sports car and unconventional methods, the odd couple brings justice to the streets. This series combined action, humor, and a strong mentor-mentee dynamic, making it a cult favorite of 80s crime TV. This is a tough one to find, but Season 3 is available on Friendly TV via Roku. There are also episodes available on Dailymotion and YouTube. Scarecrow and Mrs. King. This action comedy follows housewife Amanda King, who stumbles into the world of espionage and ends up working with professional spy Lee Scarecrow Stetson. Balancing suburban life with undercover missions, Amanda proves surprisingly adept at the spy game. The show blended romance, intrigue, and humor, offering a unique take on Cold War-era spy fiction. All 4 seasons of Scarecrow and Mrs. King are available for free on Tubi. The Love Boat, a lighthearted romantic comedy drama set aboard a luxurious cruise ship. The Love Boat featured a rotating cast of guest stars each week, and the ship's crew, led by the charming Captain Steubing, helped passengers navigate love, heartbreak, and hijinks on the high seas. With its upbeat tone and feel-good stories, it became an 80s Saturday night staple. All 9 seasons of The Love Boat are available on Paramount Plus, Amazon Prime Video, and Pluto TV. Fantasy Island. Mysterious and charismatic Mr. Rourke and his cheerful sidekick Tattoo welcome guests to a tropical island where their deepest fantasies came true, often in unexpected or ironic ways. The show mixed light fantasy with moral lessons, blending drama, comedy, and suspense. Each episode explored the consequences of wish fulfillment with a Twilight Zone-like twist. Unfortunately, this one isn't streaming anywhere that I could find, but there are some episodes available on YouTube, including the first 2 made-for-TV movies that kicked off the series. The first movie stars Bill Bixby, one of my favorite actors, and I put links to both of those movies in the description. Miami Vice. Set in the flashy, neon-lit streets of 1980s Miami, this stylish crime drama followed undercover detectives Sonny Crockett and Ricardo Tubbs as they battled drug lords and organized crime. Known for its cutting-edge fashion, contemporary music, and cinematic visuals, the show redefined TV cool. It blended gritty police work with a sleek, almost surreal aesthetic that captured the era's excesses. Miami Vice is available to stream on Pluto TV on the Universal Action Channel and on Starz. Falcon Crest was the soapy, wine-soaked drama that brought power struggles and family feuds to California's Napa Valley. Premiering in 1981, it centered on the ruthless matriarch Angela Channing, played by Jane Wyman, who would stop at nothing to control the Falcon Crest winery. Packed with betrayal, blackmail, and backstabbing relatives, the show served up high-stakes drama with a glass of Cabernet on the side. Quietly running for 9 seasons, Falcon Crest built a loyal fan base who loved its blend of glamour and grit. Falcon Crest is available for streaming on Amazon Prime Video and Plex. In 1985, the airwaves were saturated with neon-lit crime dramas and flashy detectives. But then out of Boston emerged a show that traded in the glitz for grit, offering a nuanced portrayal of a private investigator who'd rather talk things through than throw a punch. That show was Spencer for Hire, based on Robert B. Parker's best-selling novels. The series starred Robert Urich as Spencer, a tough yet thoughtful ex-cop turned private eye. Urich, known for his roles in Vegas and SWAT, brought a unique blend of charm and vulnerability to the character. Alongside him was Avery Brooks as Hawk, a morally complex enforcer with a code of honor. Brooks, who is a classically trained actor, infused Hawk with depth and gravitas, making him more than just a sidekick. It was filmed almost entirely on location in Boston, and the show captured that city's raw urban energy. From the cobblestone streets of Beacon Hill to the snow-covered alleys in the winter, the setting became a character in its own right. Urich even bought a house in Andover, and fans could spot him at local spots like Crane Beach or the Clam Box in Ipswich. Brooks was often seen at Boston nightclubs as well, which just added authenticity to their portrayals. Despite its critical acclaim and a loyal fan base, Spencer for Hire faced challenges. The show's production costs, partly due to its on-location filming, were extremely high, and frequent time slot changes didn't help the ratings. After 3 seasons, ABC canceled the series in 1988, but the characters lived on in 4 TV movies and a spin-off series called A Man Called Hawk, which aired in 1989. Looking back, Spencer for Hire was more than just a crime drama. It was a character study set against the backdrop of a city that felt alive. It offered a glimpse into the world where justice wasn't just about catching the bad guys, but understanding the complexities of right and wrong. If you haven't seen it yet, Spencer for Hire is available for free on Tubi, and it's worth the watch. In 1979, CBS introduced a primetime soap opera that would redefine the genre, Knots Landing. A spin-off of Dallas, the series centered on the lives of the residents of a suburban California cul-de-sac, blending personal drama with intricate storytelling. And they did it all with a killer cast. At the heart of the series was Karen Fairgate, portrayed by Michelle Lee. Karen was the moral compass of the show, navigating the complexities of family life and personal challenges. Lee's portrayal earned her multiple Soap Opera Digest awards and a nomination for an Emmy in 1982. Joining the cast in season 2 was Donna Mills as Abby Cunningham, a character whose manipulative charm added a new layer of intrigue to the series. Mills' portrayal of Abby became iconic, and her on-screen chemistry with the cast was undeniable. Joan Van Ark brought to life Valene Ewing, a character whose tumultuous love story with Gary Ewing, played by Ted Shackelford, became a central plotline. Interestingly enough, Van Ark initially opposed Shackelford's casting because she felt their similar energies would clash, but their on-screen partnership became one of the most beloved in television history. William Devane portrayed Greg Sumner, a character whose moral ambiguity and complex relationships added some depth to the series, and I would argue that Devane's performance set a new standard for villainous roles in television. Beyond its compelling characters, Knots Landing was known for its bold storytelling and fashion-forward moments. Episodes like Reunion in 1982 showcased glamorous 80s fashion, highlighting the show's influence on pop culture. To this day, the cast remains close. Michelle Lee, Donna Mills, and Joan Van Ark have all reunited for podcasts and events where they reminisce about their time on the show and the lasting friendships they formed. Knots Landing ran for 14 seasons from 1979 to 1993, all throughout the 80s, with a whopping 344 episodes. It was an 80s cultural touchstone, blending drama, romance, and social commentary in a way that resonated with audiences. If you haven't experienced Knots Landing yet, you can find every episode on Plex or Amazon Prime Video. And if you'd like a friend to watch it with, all you gotta do is become a channel member. This one is on my watch schedule this summer.
Dispatch, we have a 911. I'm Rob. Used surplus store, corner People's Drive, 124th Street.
Have you ever stumbled across a show that just felt real? I'm talking about the kind that didn't sugarcoat things or wrap every episode up with a neat little bow. For moms in the 80s, that show was Hill Street Blues. When it debuted in 1981, TV didn't really know what to make of it. It was a cop show that didn't just show the chase, it showed the paperwork, the coffee breaks, the burned out detectives trying to make sense of chaos. Hill Street Blues wasn't just about solving crimes, it was about people trying to survive in a broken system, and we'd never seen anything quite like it. At the center was Captain Frank Furillo, played by Daniel J. Travanti, a leader who wasn't loud or flashy, but quietly held everything together, even as his personal life crumbled around him. Then there was Sergeant Phil Esterhaus, played by Michael Conrad, who started every morning roll call with that famous line, "Let's be careful out there." That phrase wasn't just a catchphrase, it felt like a prayer. And the cast? Well, it was an incredible mix of characters that felt more like coworkers you'd seen around the office than TV stereotypes. There was Officer Lucy Bates, played by Betty Thomas, blazing her trail in a department full of guys who didn't take her seriously. There was Lieutenant Howard Hunter, played by James B. Sicking, the gung-ho paramilitary nut whose idea of community policing usually involved tear gas. And who could forget Mick Velker, the scrappy undercover cop who growled at suspects and had a soft spot for his mom. Hill Street Blues looked and sounded different too. The camera shook, the scenes overlapped, people talked over each other just like in real life. It wasn't polished, it was just honest. The show even gave us that melancholy piano theme by Mike Post. You'd hear those notes and immediately feel like you were stepping into something serious, something grounded. But for 80s kids like me, that theme meant it was time to go to bed. Behind the scenes, Hill Street was a bit of a miracle. NBC nearly pulled the plug after the pilot, thinking it was too confusing and too messy. But creators Stephen Bochco and Michael Kozel stuck to their guns. They knew they were doing something different, something smarter, and the audience eventually caught on. The show won 26 Emmys over its run, and it changed how television told stories, paving the way for shows like NYPD Blue and The Wire. This wasn't just a cop drama, it was a blueprint. Hill Street Blues ran for 7 seasons, from 1981 to 1987. And while not every episode was perfect, the series never stopped pushing the envelope. If you grew up in the 80s, chances are you remember that theme and those characters. And if you actually watched it as a kid, it felt like you were watching something that mattered. So if you've got a quiet evening and a cup of something warm, maybe just give it another look. All 7 seasons are available to rent on Amazon Prime Video. Just remember, be careful out there. When our moms and grandmas were watching TV in the early 80s, medical dramas were nothing new. But St. Elsewhere, well, that was something else entirely. It wasn't clean, it wasn't glamorous. It was messy and chaotic and incredibly human. Set in a crumbling Boston hospital called St. Eligius, this show wasn't interested in perfect diagnoses or miracle recoveries. It focused on flawed doctors, overworked nurses, and a staff that felt more like a dysfunctional family than a well-oiled machine. Some of them were brilliant, some were broken, most were both. The cast included Ed Flanders as Dr. Donald Westfall, who didn't play the hospital boss like a TV character. He played him like someone you might actually meet. Then there was Norman Lloyd as Dr. Auslander, who somehow ran the hospital while quietly battling cancer and never once asked for sympathy. William Daniels, who you might know better as Mr. Feeney from Boy Meets World, stole scenes as the sharp-tongued Dr. Mark Craig, part genius, part egomaniac. Here's the thing though, St. Elsewhere didn't just give you strong characters, it played with the format. It could be dark, funny, surreal, even self-aware. The writers once devoted a whole episode to dream sequences, and another paid tribute to classic TV shows. And they weren't afraid to break your heart either. People died unexpectedly. Characters you cared about spiraled into addiction, got fired, or just quietly faded away. The show didn't hold your hand. It trusted you to keep up, and it rewarded you if you did. Now, let's talk about that ending. When this series wrapped in 1988, St. Elsewhere delivered one of the most talked about and debated finales in TV history. If you don't know how it ended, this is your spoiler alert. The last scene of the series shows a young autistic boy named Tommy Westfall, played by teen heartthrob Chad Allen, staring into a snow globe that contains a tiny replica of the hospital fans had seen in every episode of the series. His father, who looks eerily like Dr. Westfall, says something along the lines of, "I don't know how he keeps all this in his head." The implication was the entire 6-year series may have taken place in Tommy's imagination. Some viewers were moved, others were furious. It raised philosophical questions about storytelling, reality, and how we process fiction. And it launched a theory still discussed by TV nerds to this day, the Tommy Westfall universe theory, which suggests that dozens, maybe even hundreds of TV shows are connected if you trace crossovers that began on St. Elsewhere. Whether you loved or hated that ending, you had to admit it made you think. St. Elsewhere aired from 1982 to 1988, just 6 seasons, but its influence stretched far beyond that. It paved the way for shows like ER, Scrubs, and Grey's Anatomy, but more than that, it reminded us that life, even on TV, doesn't always come with easy answers or happy endings. And if you're in the mood for a show that wasn't afraid to be smart and occasionally a little strange, St. Elsewhere is definitely worth your time. Just don't expect a tidy bow at the end. You can find all 6 seasons on Disney Plus and Hulu. Reflections of the way life used to be. When China Beach hit the airwaves in 1988, it didn't feel like anything else on TV. Set during the Vietnam War, the show didn't focus on battlefield heroics or military tactics. Instead, it told the stories of what was happening just behind the front lines. This was the world of nurses, medics, Red Cross volunteers, and wounded soldiers. And for once, the spotlight wasn't on the generals or the guns. It was on the people trying to hold it all together. Dana Delaney played Lieutenant Colleen McMurphy, an Army nurse stationed at the 510th Evac Hospital in Da Nang. McMurphy wasn't a hero in the traditional sense. She was exhausted, empathetic, stubborn, and deeply human. Delaney's performance was so layered that it earned her 2 Emmys and made McMurphy one of the most memorable characters of the decade. Then there was Casey Koloski, played by Marg Helgenberger, a Red Cross volunteer who wasn't exactly following the rules. Casey ran the beauty shop, but she also traded in black market goods and carried a suitcase full of secrets. Her character was smart, streetwise, and unpredictable. Helgenberger's role added a layer of complexity most war dramas never even attempted. You also had characters like Dr. Dick Richard, played by Robert Picardo, and Boone Lanier, a young, idealistic corpsman played by Brian Wimmer. Each brought something different to the story, a mix of hope, heartbreak, and sometimes quiet delusionment. China Beach didn't gloss over trauma either, it confronted it. PTSD, loss, and the emotional cost of war were not background themes, they were front and center. And unlike most shows set during wartime, it didn't wrap things up neatly at the end of the hour. The show was also visually striking, weaving 1960s music into nearly every scene. The Supremes, Janis Joplin, and the Rolling Stones didn't just play in the background, they anchored the emotional tone. If you were a teenager or in college during Vietnam like my parents, this music hit home, and if you grew up later like us Gen Xers did, it gave you a haunting, nostalgic sense of what the era must have felt like. Despite critical praise, China Beach struggled in the ratings. It was never a huge hit by the numbers, but it built a loyal audience, people who wanted their TV to mean something. The show ran for 4 seasons, from 1988 to 1991, and left a lasting impression on anyone who saw it. And here's something wild. For years, the series wasn't even available on DVD, much less streaming. The music rights were so hard to clear, it became one of the most requested, lost shows of the pre-digital era. When it finally did get released on DVD in 2013, fans lined up to reclaim a piece of their past. China Beach may not have had the longest run, but it left an emotional footprint far beyond its 62 episodes. It showed war, not through explosions and action sequences, but through bloodied scrubs, tearful goodbyes, and the quiet, stubborn will to keep going. It's a show that stays with you, and if you've never watched it, it's time. Just know that the only place that you can find it is on a DVD box set that you can buy on Amazon. 1980s, there was a show that didn't just depict life, it dissected it. 30 something wasn't about car chases or courtroom dramas. It was about the quiet moments, the late night conversations, the unspoken fears, the dreams deferred. Premiering on ABC in 1987, this series became a mirror for the baby boomer generation that was grappling with the complexities of adulthood. Set in Philadelphia, 30 something followed a group of friends navigating the tumultuous waters of their 30s. From career dilemmas to relationship challenges, the show explored the intricacies of modern life with unmatched depth. The ensemble cast, featuring Ken Olin, Mel Harris, Timothy Busfeld, and Polly Draper, brought these characters to life, earning the series 13 Emmy Awards and 2 Golden Globes during its 4-season run. But it wasn't just the accolades that made 30 something stand out. The show was a pioneer in its portrayal of everyday struggles. It delved into topics like infertility, mental health, and the pursuit of personal fulfillment, subjects often left untouched by mainstream television at the time. This kind of honest storytelling resonated deeply with viewers like my mom, who turned 30 the year it came out, making it a cultural touchstone. Despite its critical success, 30 something faced challenges in the ratings, but its impact was undeniable. The phrase 30 something earned a spot in the Oxford English Dictionary in 1993 because of this show, a testament to its influence on the lexicon of a generation. In 2019, a sequel series titled 30 Something Else was announced, aiming to revisit the lives of the original characters, but the project was ultimately shelved by ABC, leaving fans wondering what could have been. Like China Beach, 30 Something is not available on streaming platforms, but its legacy endures. It's a series that continues to spark conversations, reminding us that the journey through adulthood is as complex as it is universal. If you haven't experienced yet, it's worth seeking out. You can find it on DVD. I mean, come on, some stories are timeless. If you grew up in the late 70s or early 80s, Sunday nights probably meant one thing: Dallas. It wasn't just a TV show, it was a full blown cultural event. The theme song alone could make you feel like something big was about to happen. Premiering in 1978 as a 5-part miniseries, Dallas quickly expanded into a primetime juggernaut. The story centered around the Ewing family, wealthy oil barons living at the sprawling South Fork Ranch just outside of Dallas, Texas. But behind the polished facade was a legacy built on lies, manipulation, and power struggles that would make even Shakespeare raise an eyebrow. At the center of it all was J.R. Ewing, played to greasy perfection by Larry Hagman. J.R. wasn't just a villain, he was the villain of the decade. Cold, calculating, always 5 steps ahead, and somehow we couldn't take our eyes off him. He was the kind of character you loved to hate, and Hagman made him magnetic. When someone finally pulled the trigger on JR in the season 3 finale, it became the most watched cliffhanger in television history. Everyone had a theory. People held viewing parties. Even the New York Times ran speculation pieces. When the answer was finally revealed, it pulled in over 80 million viewers. That episode became a defining moment of 20th century television. It was such a big deal that Gen Xers grew up hearing "Who Shot JR" before they even fully understood what it meant. But Dallas wasn't just JR's playground. His younger brother Bobby, played by Patrick Duffy, was the moral foil, handsome, idealistic, and constantly clashing with JR's ruthless ambition. Bobby's on-again, off-again relationship with Pam Barnes, played by Victoria Principal, who came from a rival oil family, brought Romeo and Juliet romance into the cutthroat world of Texas oil. Barbara Bel Geddes and later Donna Reed played Miss Ellie, the strong, compassionate matriarch of the Ewing family and the wife of Jock Ewing. She was deeply rooted in the South Fork Ranch, which she inherited from her family, and she was often the moral center of the series. Miss Ellie balanced loyalty to her family with a firm sense of right and wrong, often mediating conflicts between her sons. Her character was emblematic of tradition, resilience, and maternal strength. And then there was Sue Ellen, JR's wife, portrayed brilliantly by Linda Gray. She started out as the elegant, dutiful Southern belle, but as JR's betrayals piled up, she unraveled, fell into alcoholism, and eventually found her own strength. Her arc was one of the most emotionally resonant in the entire series. Gray's performance brought vulnerability and fire to a show that could have easily leaned into melodrama and stayed there. Dallas tapped into something deeper, though, than just money and oil. It was about loyalty, betrayal, and legacy. It mirrored the excess and ambition of the Reagan years, and for many viewers, it reflected the growing cultural divide between old money, new money, and no money. The show wasn't afraid to take big swings either. Remember when Bobby Ewing died and then just walked out of the shower a season later, revealing that it had all been a dream? It was one of the boldest and most controversial moves in TV history. Some fans hated it, others loved it, but everyone talked about it. And that was the power of Dallas. The show ran for 14 seasons from 1978 to 1991 and even spawned spin offs like Knots Landing, which I talked about earlier, and a revival in 2012. But nothing quite matched the original's magic, that mix of Southern charm, corporate backstabbing, and the sense that at any moment, everything could go up in flames. If you've never watched Dallas, or if it's been a while, go back to the beginning. The entire series is available on Amazon Prime. Just let that theme music roll in, step into South Fork, and remember what TV felt like when it wasn't just entertainment, it was an event. I'm actually starting a rewatch of Dallas here on this channel, and you can watch along with me if you become a channel member. If Dallas gave us ruthless Texas oil barons, Dynasty gave us the same fight, but in high heels, designer gowns, and with a martini in hand. Premiering in January 1981, Dynasty was ABC's answer to Dallas, but it didn't take long for the show to step out of its rival's shadow and strut confidently in its own stilettos. Created by Esther and Richard Shapiro and backed by legendary producer Aaron Spelling, Dynasty leaned into the opulence of the 80s with both hands, and audiences loved it. At the center of the story was Blake Carrington, a Denver oil tycoon played with smooth authority by John Forsythe. Blake was proud, powerful, and deeply flawed. But unlike J.R. Ewing, he wasn't a straight up villain. He was a man trying to protect an empire, even when it meant bulldozing his own family. And then came Crystal, played by Linda Evans. Crystal Carrington was Blake's second wife, beautiful, kind, and often caught in the emotional crossfire of the Carrington clan. For a while, she was the show's moral core, but she was no pushover, and it didn't take long before she was throwing punches and koi pons with the woman who redefined the word diva, Alexis. Joan Collins didn't just play Alexis Carrington Colby, she was Alexis Carrington Colby. Introduced in season 2, she came sweeping into court wearing a veil, heels clicking, ready to ignite the fuse that turned Dynasty from a family drama into a full-blown primetime phenomenon. Alexis was the ex-wife, the power player, the fashion icon, and the unapologetic schemer who kept one eye on her enemies and the other on the mirror. But what made Alexis so compelling wasn't just her cruelty, it was her intelligence, her ambition, her vulnerability buried deep beneath layers of mascara and Chanel. Week after week, viewers tuned in not just for the boardroom betrayals and business power plays, but the fashion, the flair, and those gloriously over-the-top confrontations. The Crystal versus Alexis fights became legendary. Flying champagne, torn sleeves, tiaras in the mud, it was pure spectacle, but grounded in characters you either loved or you loved to hate. And then there was the Moldavian Massacre, the 1985 season finale where a royal wedding was interrupted by a machine gun ambush. It was one of the most shocking cliffhangers of the decade, and while the payoff in the next season was a little underwhelming, it didn't matter. Dynasty knew how to make an entrance and a statement. The show didn't shy away from hot-button issues either. It introduced one of TV's first openly gay characters in Stephen Carrington, Blake's son, whose storyline tackled homophobia, identity, and family loyalty. It wasn't always handled with nuance, but it was groundbreaking at the time. And when Diane Carroll joined the cast as Dominique Devereaux, she became the first major black character on a primetime soap of this scale. Carroll's performance was cool, commanding, and unforgettable. By the mid-80s, Dynasty was the #1 show in America. It wasn't just a soap, it was style. Nolan Miller's fashion designs from the show became trend-setting. Power shoulders, beaded gowns, diamonds so big they could deflect light. You didn't just watch Dynasty, you wanted to be in it. The show eventually ran out of steam and closed the doors of Carrington Manor in 1989 after 9 seasons. But by then, it had done its job. It had captured a moment. The greed, the elegance, the ambition. It was a fantasy, sure, but one dressed in just enough reality to keep us watching. If Dallas was about legacy and bloodlines, Dynasty was about image and what it cost to protect it. And for those of us who remember what it felt like to watch that opening theme spin across the screen, we weren't just watching television, we were watching royalty. If you're up for a rewatch in 2025, you can find the entire series on Netflix. In the early 80s, detective shows were everywhere, but Remington Steel wasn't just another whodunit. It was clever, romantic, self-aware, and it gave us a woman taking charge without giving up an ounce of her intelligence or integrity. Premiering on NBC in 1982, Remington Steel started with a simple but brilliant premise. Private investigator Laura Holt, played with poise and quiet fire by Stephanie Zimbalist, couldn't get clients to take her seriously. Not because she wasn't capable, but because she was a woman. So, she created a fictional male boss, Remington Steel, a name on the office door, a myth. And then, in walked the myth himself. Pierce Brosnan, with his razor-sharp charm and impeccable timing, stepped into the role of the con man who assumes the Steel identity. He brought elegance, wit, and a dash of mystery, and suddenly, the agency had a very real Remington Steel. The tension between Laura and her new partner became the heartbeat of the show. It wasn't just romantic, though it definitely was. It was also a constant tug of war between control and chaos, logic and instinct, head and heart. Laura was the brain behind every case, Steele the face. But as the series progressed, their partnership evolved into something far more complicated and far more interesting than that simple equation. They relied on each other, challenged each other, and yes, occasionally exasperated one another. The chemistry was undeniable, but so was the frustration. What made Remington Steel so unique is that the show had fun with its own format. Steele, a movie buff, often solved cases by referencing old Hollywood films. It was a wink to the audience and a love letter to noir. Think of it as The Thin Man meets Moonlighting, before Moonlighting even existed. But more about that show in a minute. Episodes of Remington Steel often balanced mystery with comedy, suspense with romantic tension, and a style that felt timeless even as it screamed 80s glamour. But behind the charm was something quietly radical. Remington Steel was created by a woman. Robert Butler and Michael Gleason developed the show, but it was Gleason's wife, Joan, who first came up with the idea. Laura Holt was never the damsel, never the sidekick. She was the one driving the story, and the series constantly explored what it meant for her to be both in control and in love with someone who often took the spotlight from her, even when he didn't mean to. The show ran for 5 seasons and ended in 1987, but not without drama behind the scenes. In fact, Brosnan was offered the role of James Bond in 1986, but NBC exercised a last-minute renewal option on Remington Steel, blocking him from taking the gig. The show returned for 6 more episodes, but the momentum had faded by that point. Brosnan would eventually get his license to kill in the 90s, but fans still wonder what might have been if Steel had wrapped up on its own terms. My mom always said that Pierce Brosnan would make the perfect James Bond, years before he got the role. That's one thing I vividly remember about my mom's TV watching habits in the 80s. Despite the less than spectacular ending, Remington Steel left its mark. It was romantic, yes, but it was also sharp, modern, and ahead of its time. It gave us a female lead who didn't need saving, a male lead who wasn't afraid to be vulnerable, and a partnership that was equal parts brains and charm. It may not have had the ratings juggernaut status of its contemporaries, but for those who watched it, and especially those who related to Laura Holt, it was unforgettable. If you're looking for something that's equal parts mystery, comedy, and pure 80s cool, this one's worth a revisit. Just be warned, once you hear that theme music, you'll be hooked all over again. Episodes of Remington Steel are available to rent on Amazon Prime Video and Apple TV.
Someone by night, someone
When Moonlighting premiered on ABC in 1985, it didn't just introduce audiences to a clever detective show. It redefined what a television drama could be. Starring Sybil Shepherd and a then unknown Bruce Willis, the series combined romantic tension, fast paced comedy, and mystery in a way that was fresh, bold, and undeniably captivating. At the center of Moonlighting was the relationship between Maddie Hayes, a former fashion model whose financial downfall leaves her in charge of a failing detective agency, and David Addison, the agency's wisecracking private investigator. Together, they solve cases while dealing with a turbulent partnership defined by constant sparring and undeniable chemistry. But what truly set Moonlighting apart was its willingness to experiment. The show routinely broke the fourth wall, with characters speaking directly to the audience or acknowledging the artificiality of television. Some episodes played with format entirely, incorporating fantasy sequences, black and white homages to classic films, and meta commentary on the nature of storytelling itself. This kind of genre blending was rare on network television at the time, and it earned the show both critical acclaim and a devoted fan base. The dialogue, inspired by screwball comedies of the 1930s and 40s, was another hallmark of the series. Conversations between Maddie and David unfolded in rapid-fire exchanges, filled with wit, sarcasm, and sexual tension. The dynamic between Shepherd and Willis became the show's signature element, drawing viewers week after week to see how or if their relationship would evolve. However, behind the scenes, Moonlighting was a notoriously difficult production. The chemistry between Shepherd and Willis was real but often strained. Reports of frequent disagreements, long working hours, and creative clashes were common throughout the series' run. Shepherd's pregnancy during the third season led to scheduling complications, while Willis's rising film career, especially after the success of Die Hard, further complicated production. As the series progressed, episodes became increasingly delayed, with gaps between new airings growing longer. At one point, episodes that should have taken 8 days to film were stretching into 2 or 3 weeks. These delays frustrated viewers and contributed to a decline in ratings. Another challenge was what critics later dubbed the Moonlighting curse, the belief that once a show's central romantic tension is resolved, its narrative momentum suffers. In season 4, Maddie and David finally consummate their relationship, but rather than providing closure, it marked the beginning of the show's decline. Maddie's character was temporarily written out following Shepherd's maternity leave, and plot lines grew more uneven and less focused on the pair's dynamic. By the time Moonlighting aired its final episode in 1989, the show had lost much of its earlier spark, but its influence endured. The series paved the way for later television dramas that blurred the lines between genres, incorporated meta-narratives, and prioritized character relationships as much as plot. Moonlighting earned numerous accolades during its run, including multiple Emmy Awards and Golden Globe wins. Bruce Willis's breakout performance launched him into massive superstardom, while Sybil Shepherd cemented her status as a versatile leading actress. For many viewers in the 1980s, particularly women, Moonlighting offered a weekly escape into a world where romance, mystery, and wit collided. Its sophisticated writing, charismatic leads, and bold stylistic choices made it more than just entertainment. It was a show that left a lasting mark on television history. Moonlighting is available on Tubi for free. It's also streaming on Disney+, Amazon Prime Video, and Hulu. In the late 1970s, when gritty cop shows and lone wolf detectives dominated the airwaves, Heart to Heart did something bold. It wrapped mystery in romance, dressed it in designer clothes, and turned crime solving into a couple's getaway. Premiering in 1979, Heart to Heart was the creation of none other than Sidney Sheldon, one of the most successful novelists and screenwriters of the 20th century. But what made this show stick wasn't just the mysteries. It was the couple at the center of it all. Jonathan and Jennifer Hart weren't just TV's chicest crime-fighting duo. They were relationship goals before we even had a phrase for that. Robert Wagner played Jonathan Hart, a self-made millionaire and CEO of Hart Industries. He had the looks, the cars, the jet, but what really defined him was his deep love for his wife. Jennifer Hart, played by the effortlessly elegant Stephanie Powers, was a former freelance journalist with a nose for a good story and a tendency to walk right into trouble with a smile on her face. Together, they had the kind of chemistry that didn't just sizzle, it sparkled. This was a rare thing on television, a married couple that was actually happy, passionate, playful. They flirted like newlyweds, finished each other's sentences, and backed each other up, whether at a black tie gala or crawling through a ventilation duct. And somehow they made you believe that being rich, in love, and constantly dodging danger was just a typical Tuesday. Their world was impossibly glamorous. Private planes, art auctions, five-star hotels, and enough champagne to float a yacht. But the mysteries? They were real. Murders, jewel thefts, espionage. Each episode had Jonathan and Jennifer using their brains, charm, and connections to outwit the bad guys. And always by their side was Max, their loyal houseman, chauffeur, bodyguard, and friend, played by the gravel voice, scene-stealing Lionel Stander. Max grounded the show with his affection for Mr. and Mrs. H. He wasn't just comic relief, he was family. Behind the camera, Heart to Heart was a production powerhouse. The chemistry between Wagner and Powers wasn't accidental. They were close friends in real life, and it showed. Their trust and ease with one another brought an authenticity to their performances that elevated the show from light mystery fare into something warmer and more intimate. The series ran for 5 seasons on ABC from 1979 to 1984 and developed a devoted fan base, including my mom. I think she wanted to be Jennifer Hart. Heart to Heart scored multiple Emmy and Golden Globe nominations along the way, and when the show ended, well, fans weren't ready to say goodbye. So, from 1993 to 1996, Heart to Heart returned in 8 made-for-TV movies because people still wanted to see Jonathan and Jennifer solve crimes and trade kisses in exotic locales. Heart to Heart wasn't trying to be edgy. It wasn't about tortured anti-heroes or bleak realism. It was about a married couple who genuinely liked each other and just happened to fall into murder investigations while wearing Armani. And that's what made it special. For a generation growing up in the 80s, it was one of the first times marriage looked fun, like partnership, like adventure. It showed us that romance didn't end after the wedding, that it could evolve into something even more thrilling. So if you ever find yourself longing for a show where love, luxury, and a good whodunit live in perfect harmony, it's time to cue that opening narration.
This is my boss, Jonathan Hart, a self-made millionaire. This is Mrs. H. She's gorgeous. She's one lady who knows how to take care of herself.
Heart to Heart is available to stream on the Roku channel, or you can rent it on Apple TV or Amazon Prime Video. In the pantheon of 1980s television, Magnum PI stands as a defining series that encapsulated the era's blend of action, charm, and character-driven storytelling. And it was my mom's absolute favorite, which is why it's at number 1. Honestly, the other rankings on this list could be switched around a million different ways, but there was no doubt about who was going to be at number 1. As my mom explained to me when I asked her about what made Magnum her favorite, she said it was because he was a single man with no leading lady. She explained that shows with couples were another matter because it was always about the chemistry, but with Magnum, it was all about a single iconic male lead. Airing on CBS from 1980 to 1988, the show introduced audiences to Thomas Sullivan Magnum IV, a private investigator whose laid-back demeanor and adventurous spirit captivated viewers across the nation. Portrayed by Tom Selleck, Magnum was a departure from the typical hard-boiled detectives of the time. A former Navy SEAL and Vietnam veteran, he resided in the guest house of the luxurious Robin's Nest estate in Oahu, Hawaii, courtesy of the enigmatic author Robin Masters. While serving as the estate's security consultant, Magnum took on private investigation cases that often led him into complex and dangerous situations. Selleck's portrayal brought a unique blend of charisma, vulnerability, and humor to the character. His insistence on playing Magnum as a relatable, flawed individual rather than a flawless action hero resonated with audiences. This approach allowed the series to explore deeper emotional narratives, including themes of friendship, loyalty, and the lingering effects of war. Magnum's adventures were enriched by a memorable supporting cast that included Jonathan Quayle Higgins III, played by John Hillerman, the estate's stern British caretaker, whose disciplined demeanor often clashed with Magnum's relaxed attitude. Their interactions provided both comic relief and moments of genuine camaraderie. There was also Orville Rick Wright, played by Larry Manetti, a fellow Vietnam veteran and manager of the King Kamehameha Club. Rick served as Magnum's connection to the island's social scene and underworld. Finally, there was Theodore T.C. Calvin, played by Roger E. Mosley. Another Vietnam comrade of Magnum's, T.C. operated a helicopter tour business and frequently assisted Magnum with aerial support during his investigations. This ensemble not only added depth to the narrative, but also highlighted the importance of chosen family and the enduring bonds formed through shared experiences. The show's setting in Hawaii was more than just a picturesque backdrop. It was integral to the series' identity. The lush landscapes, secluded beaches, and vibrant culture provided a unique atmosphere that set Magnum PI apart from other detective shows of the time. Creator Donald P. Belisario emphasized showcasing a version of Hawaii untouched by modern development, aiming to capture its natural beauty and timeless allure. Magnum PI consistently ranked among the top television programs during its run, with its highest Nielsen rating reaching number 3 in the 1982-83 season. The series' success was bolstered by its iconic theme music, composed by Mike Post and Pete Carpenter, which became synonymous with 1980s television and even charted on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1982. The show's influence extended beyond its original airing. It inspired a reboot in 2018 and left an indelible mark on the detective genre. Magnum's blend of action, humor, and emotional depth paved the way for future series to explore more nuanced and character-driven narratives. Oh, and one more thing. Tom Selleck would have landed the role of Indiana Jones in Raiders of the Lost Ark instead of Harrison Ford, but his commitment to Magnum PI prevented him from taking the part, a decision that ultimately solidified Selleck's association with the iconic television character. Magnum PI is available to stream on the Roku channel and on Philo. And there you have it, 12 unforgettable dramas and a few honorable mentions that kept our moms glued to the TV every week in the 1980s. Looking back, it's no wonder these shows made such an impact. They had heart, humor, mystery, and just enough romance to make you wonder what all the fuss was about. For those of us growing up in the background of these shows, they weren't just TV, they were part of the soundtrack of our childhoods. And if you're like me, every theme song, every one-liner, and every cliffhanger still lives rent-free in your memory. Thank you so much for watching. If you loved this trip down memory lane, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And if you would like to re-watch some of these gems with me, become a channel member. Oh, and please let me know, what was your mom's favorite 80s drama? Or maybe, what's your favorite now? I can't wait to read your comments. Okay, bye!